Sofia Bellini was dragged into the underground council chamber, wearing the crimson dress Dante Moretti had once told her made every man forget how dangerous she was. Now his guards forced her to her knees beneath 12 security screens, displaying evidence that she had changed the coordinates of an alliance meeting. 40 men had vanished at the false location, and Sofia's encrypted credentials were attached to the order. Dante signed her death warrant without looking into her eyes. She had 20 minutes before the Allied families arrived to divide his territory, yet the command had been transmitted while Sofia was beside Dante, translating a 3-hour negotiation under constant surveillance. Someone had used access that should have been impossible to duplicate. Then Sofia recognized a harmless phrase repeating across the security screens, a childhood code known only to Dante and his supposedly dead mother, with footsteps approaching outside. Sofia rose and spoke one sentence to the intercom. Every Allied delegation stopped moving, and Dante's oldest friend quietly locked the chamber doors. Sofia Bellini was dragged into the underground council chamber wearing the crimson dress Dante Moretti had once said made every man in Manhattan forget how dangerous she was. The silk followed the generous curves of her body with unapologetic elegance, but the guards gripping her arms treated her as though she were already condemned. One of her heels had broken on the stairs. She removed the other herself, lifted her chin, and walked barefoot into the circle of 12 glowing security screens. Dante stood at the black council table, one hand resting beside a pistol and the other curled around a silver pen. At 38, he ruled the Moretti Empire through discipline rather than spectacle. Tonight, however, control had deserted him. Every screen displayed the same encrypted command. At 8:17 p.m., Sofia's credentials had redirected 40 Moretti soldiers from the Alliance summit to an abandoned freight terminal in Red Hook. Their convoy had disappeared 14 minutes later. No calls, no bodies, no ransom demand, only silence. The authorization passed 3 biometric checks, Matteo Rinaldi said. Dante's oldest friend and security chief, the chief, placed a tablet on the table. Her voice, her fingerprint, her translation cipher. Sofia looked at the evidence without flinching. Then all 3 were copied. Matteo gave a humorless smile. You designed the cipher? Yes. Which is why I know that screen isn't showing the original command. Dante finally met her eyes. The coldness in his face hurt more than the guards. Hands, you changed the coordinates, he said. I opened the routing system, Sofia replied. I did not send that order. A video began playing behind her. It showed Sofia entering the communications room alone at 8:11. 6 minutes later, the fatal command had been transmitted. The footage then showed her deleting the session record before leaving. The accusation contained a truth she could not deny. Dante's gaze hardened. Why did you erase the record? Sofia glanced at Matteo. Not in front of everyone. You no longer decide who hears the truth if I say it here. The people coming upstairs may never reach this room. A murmur moved around the table. The Lushis, Petrov, and Haddad delegations would arrive in 20 minutes to ratify the most important territorial alliance in Moretti history. Without the 40 missing soldiers, Dante's security perimeter was exposed. If he canceled the summit, the 3 families would interpret it as weakness and divide his ports before sunrise. Matteo slid a document toward him. The council has voted. Her execution restores confidence before the delegations arrive. Sofia stared at the warrant. 7 years of translating threats. Detecting lies and preventing wars had been reduced to a single sheet of paper. Dante picked up the pen. For one suspended second, she remembered that same hand resting against the small of her back during diplomatic dinners, guiding her through rooms where powerful men dismissed her until she spoke their language more fluently than they did. She had mistaken his reliance on her for trust. Dante, she said quietly, the command was transmitted while I was sitting beside you. You left the negotiation twice to take a call from my sister's hospital. 3 minutes was enough. His answer landed with the clean precision of a blade. He signed. The ink had barely dried when a line of harmless text appeared at the bottom of every security screen. The blue room must be dark before the child comes home. Sofia stopped breathing. Years earlier, after Dante had been wounded and feverish, he had whispered those words in his sleep. When she asked what they meant, he told her his mother used to say them whenever danger entered their house. Eleonora Moretti had been dead for 22 years. "Where did that sentence come from?" Sofia demanded. Matteo reached for the control panel, but she drove her broken heel into the nearest guard's foot, tore free, and struck the emergency intercom. "Tell Eleonora Moretti," Sofia said into the building-wide channel, "that her son remembers the blue room." Footsteps stopped in the corridor above. On the surveillance screens, all 3 Allied delegations froze simultaneously. Then Matteo drew his weapon, locked the chamber doors, and aimed at Sofia as a reply appeared across every monitor. The boy finally listened. 36 hours earlier, Sofia had been standing behind Dante's right shoulder in the Moretti Tower boardroom, correcting a war before anyone else realized one had begun. The Petrov delegation sat across the table, beneath windows overlooking a rain-darkened Manhattan. Their representative, Viktor Sokolov, had just offered Dante temporary access to 2 Brooklyn shipping terminals. The English translation sounded generous. The original Russian was not. He said they would place the terminals under your protection. The junior interpreter whispered. Sofia shook her head. "No," he said. "The terminals would remain under their protection while operating in your name. The difference was 6 words and nearly $80 million. Dante did not turn toward her. He simply closed the unsigned contract and slid it back across the table. "Mr. Sokolov," he said, "if you want Moretti protection, you will not use Moretti liability." Victor's expression changed. He looked past Dante at the voluptuous woman in the fitted charcoal dress. Sofia met his stare calmly, one hand resting on the gold fountain pen she carried to every negotiation. "You hired a better interpreter," Victor said in Russian. Dante answered in English. "I hired the best person in the room." It was the closest he ever came to praising her publicly. 10 minutes later, after the Petrovs agreed to rewrite the clause, Dante left the boardroom without waiting for her. Sofia gathered the marked contracts, corrected the junior interpreter's notes, and reminded security that Victor's driver had used a Serbian phrase associated with the Haddad family. 3 departments depended on observations no one would remember she had made. Matteo Rinaldi remained by the windows. "He trusts your ears more than his captains," he said. "He trusts what my ears can do for him." Matteo smiled. "Is there a difference?" Sofia capped her pen. "There is always a difference." At 34, she had spent 14 years turning language into leverage. She could hear when a Calabrian softened a threat into a favor, when a Russian changed pronouns to conceal responsibility, and when an Arabic speaker repeated a rehearsed lie instead of remembering an actual event. Dante used to call those details instincts. Sofia had spent years teaching him they were evidence. Her phone vibrated. The hospital number made her answer immediately. Her younger sister, Gianna, had developed an infection after heart surgery. The doctor said the treatment was working, but Gianna would need another week of observation. Sofia promised she would visit after the Alliance summit and transferred the remaining hospital deposit before ending the call. When she looked up, Matteo was watching her. "Family trouble? Nothing that affects my work." "In this organization, everything affects the work." The sentence sounded sympathetic. It also sounded like a warning. Sofia carried the contracts downstairs to the communications division, where she supervised the multilingual authentication system used for sensitive Moretti orders. Voice and fingerprint checks were not enough. Deepfake software could reproduce a voice, and lifted prints could fool commercial scanners. Sofia had therefore built a third safeguard into every translated command, a cadence cipher based on the natural timing between paired phrases. More importantly, all location changes required a spoken confirmation in 2 languages, no exceptions. She placed her gold pen beside the console and reviewed the afternoon test logs. Every command contained the correct biometric seals and her timing signature. Then she reached the emergency access section. A request had been made for a duplicate of her voice profile. Sofia frowned. The request carried Dante's executive authorization and Matteo's security approval. Its stated purpose was continuity protection, in case she became unavailable during the summit. Matteo entered behind her before she could open the detailed record. "You saw the backup request," he said. "You approved a copy of my voice without consulting me. The Alliance brings 3 language groups into one building. If you get sick, leave for the hospital, or decide you've had enough of us. Dante cannot become mute. My voice profile can authorize field orders, only with your fingerprint and cadence cipher." Sofia studied him. "Then, why duplicate it?" "Because Dante needs systems that survive individuals." It sounded exactly like something Dante would say. That was why it worked. Sofia opened the authorization window and found Dante's digital signature. She knew its architecture because she had helped create the multilingual version. The credential was authentic. Still, she refused to release the unrestricted profile. Instead, she created a limited backup that could translate negotiations but could not authorize money transfers, personnel movements, or location changes. She signed the modification with her gold pen S embedded encryption key, then removed the key and slipped it into the concealed seam of her handbag. Matteo's eyes followed the motion. "You don't trust security," he said. "I don't trust convenience." For the first time, his smiles disappeared. Later that evening, Sofia entered Dante's office and found him studying alliance maps while eating the dinner she had ordered for him 3 hours earlier. "Matteo requested a copy of my voice profile," she said. Dante continued reading. "I approved it. You approved continuity access." "He requested operational access." That made him look up. "Did you give it to him?" "No, then the system worked." Sofia wanted him to ask why Matteo had exceeded the authorization. She wanted him to recognize that preventing a breach was not the same as proving no one had attempted one. Instead, Dante handed her a page of Romanian shipping terms. "I need these verified before midnight." She took the document. He had heard her warning. He had simply trusted her to carry its weight alone. At 11:43 p.m., while reviewing the final communications test, Sofia found a maintenance command that had bypassed her restricted backup. It contained no coordinates, no financial instruction, and no obvious threat. Only one line repeated beneath the system code. "The blue room must be dark before the child comes home." The account that entered it belonged to a woman declared dead 22 years earlier, Eleonora Moretti. Sofia stared at Eleonora Moretti's name until the letters blurred against the screen. The account could not be active. After Eleonora's death, every credential associated with her had been sealed inside the Moretti Legacy Archive. The records remained in the system for inheritance disputes, but they possessed no operational authority. Sofia began with the least dangerous explanation: a diagnostic error. She disconnected the live network, loaded the previous month's backup into an isolated terminal, and ran the maintenance command again. The phrase appeared in the same position, labeled as an archival verification key, that explained the words. It did not explain the access. The command entered that night had not come from the archive. It had been authenticated with a physical security token manufactured 6 months earlier. Someone had given a dead woman a new key. Sofia reached for her phone, then stopped. Every internal call passed through the communications system. If the person controlling Eleonora's account could bypass her restrictions, they could monitor outgoing warnings. Calling Dante without knowing who was listening might force the intruder to act sooner. She removed the encryption key from her gold pen and inserted it into the isolated terminal. The device created an offline copy of the access record, including its hardware certificate and transmission path. She then printed the certificate number on a narrow strip of paper and concealed it beneath the lining of her handbag. Only after preserving the evidence did she test the account's authority. Eleonora's credential appeared harmless under modern security rules. It could read historical files but could not alter them. Yet when Sofia paired it with her restricted voice backup, the system produced an unexpected result. Continuity protocol accepted. A new control layer opened. Personnel routes, emergency funds, building lockdowns, alliance communications. Her limited voice profile had become operational when combined with the legacy account. Sofia's skin went cold. The safeguard had not failed. Someone had assembled two incomplete permissions that became dangerous only when used together. Matteo had requested one. Whoever controlled Eleonora's identity possessed the other. She photographed nothing. Images could synchronize automatically to compromised storage. Instead, she wrote the command sequence by hand in Italian, Russian, and Arabic, changing one word in each version according to a private linguistic pattern only she could reconstruct. At 12:06 a.m., she went upstairs to Dante's office. 2 guards blocked the corridor. "He's in the secure conference room," one said. "I need 5 minutes." Mr. Rinaldi ordered complete isolation until the summit. "This concerns." The summit. The guard avoided her eyes. "No exceptions." Sofia used the executive intercom beside the elevator. Dante's private extension rang once before the screen displayed an unfamiliar message. Translation services suspended until 6 a.m. Her access had been restricted less than 20 minutes after she opened Eleonora's record. Someone knew she was investigating. She returned to communications and found the maintenance screen restored to normal. The dead account had disappeared from the active logs. Even the backup request Matteo had submitted now described only harmless language continuity. The intruder was erasing the trail behind her. Sofia opened the system's automated audit queue. Unlike ordinary logs, those records were duplicated inside an independent accounting server used by Moretti Maritime, Dante's legitimate shipping company. Security could alter one copy, but changing both required approval from the corporate compliance office. She sent a routine translation invoice through the accounting server, embedding the certificate number in the document's punctuation pattern. The invoice went to Evelyn Shaw, the company's compliance attorney, who had once worked with Sofia on a federal customs review. Evelyn would recognize that Sofia never placed spaces before semicolons unless she was signaling manipulated records. The transmission completed. 3 seconds later, the accounting server rejected it and closed Sofia's session. Matteo appeared in the doorway. "You work late," he said. Sofia removed the pen key and placed it back inside her handbag. "So do you." His gaze moved from the isolated terminal to the printer. The certificate strip was no longer there, but its absence seemed to interest him more than its presence would have. "Dante needs you rested tomorrow. Dante needs to know someone activated a dead woman's account." Matteo did not ask which woman. That was the second impossible fact. Sofia kept her expression neutral. "You already knew. I know this building contains old systems and nervous employees. You requested my unrestricted voice profile, and you refused. Someone used the restricted version anyway." Matteo stepped inside and closed the door. "Then perhaps you designed a weaker system than Dante was led to believe." Sofia moved subtly toward the emergency release beneath the desk. Matteo noticed but made no attempt to stop her. "If you think I compromised it," she said, "detain me without evidence?" "Dante would never forgive me." The words were gentle. The threat beneath them was not. Matteo wanted her free because he still needed something from her. Sofia pressed the release. The opposite door opened into the staff corridor, and she walked out without running. At the elevator, she called Gianna S. Hospital from her personal phone. She asked the night nurse to add a verbal password to her sister's records and forbid all visitors claiming to represent Moretti Maritime. Then she called Dante's private cell. The connection failed. A second attempt reached his voicemail, but Sofia heard a faint mechanical click before the recording began. The line was being mirrored. She ended the call without speaking. At 2:18 a.m., Sofia entered the underground parking garage and found the driver's door of her car unlocked. Nothing appeared disturbed. The hospital receipts remained in the console. Her spare shoes were beneath the seat, and no tracking device was visible around the wheel wells. On the passenger seat lay a photograph of Dante as a child, standing beside his mother in a blue-painted room. A sentence had been written across Eleonora's face. "Give us the pen, or his men will never come home." Sofia looked toward the nearest security camera. Its red light blinked once. High above her, inside the security control room, Matteo watched her, close her hand around the gold pen, and understood that she had kept the evidence. Sofia did not surrender the gold pen. She left the parking garage through the pedestrian exit, abandoned her car, and took 3 different cabs before reaching Gianna's hospital. She remained there until dawn, watching her younger sister sleep, while 2 private guards Sofia trusted stood outside the room. At 6:40 a.m., she received a message from Dante's number. "We need to speak privately. Come to the tower at 7 tonight. Tell no one." The punctuation was wrong. Dante never placed a period after a direct order. Sofia deleted the message and spent the day reconstructing the certificate number from memory. The hardware token connected to Eleonora's account had been issued through Rinaldi's Strategic Protection, a legitimate security company Matteo owned before joining the Moretti organization. That established access, not guilt. Anyone inside Matteo's department could have assigned the token. She needed the original issuance record at 7:32 p.m. Sofia returned to Moretti Tower because the Alliance summit could not be delayed, and 40 soldiers were scheduled to reinforce the building. She entered through the public lobby, ensuring multiple independent cameras recorded her arrival. Matteo met her outside the elevator. "You should have stayed at the hospital," he said. "You should have stayed out of my system. I was trying to protect Dante. Then let me speak to him after the preliminary negotiation." Again, he prevented direct contact without openly detaining her. Sofia entered the summit chamber and took her usual place beside Dante. For 3 hours, she translated territorial boundaries, port revenues, and security obligations while searching every document for a hidden change. Dante never mentioned the message sent from his phone. He had not written it. At 8:08 p.m., during a recess, Sofia's tablet displayed an emergency routing notice. The 40-man security convoy had been ordered away from Moretti Tower toward the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. The instruction carried her limited voice profile paired with Eleonora's legacy credential. The tunnel route placed every soldier beneath ground level, beyond ordinary radio contact. It was a containment point. Sofia could not warn Dante through the internal network. She could not confront Matteo without revealing how much she knew. She had less than 10 minutes before the convoy entered the tunnel. She left the negotiation and hurried to the communications room. At 8:11, the security camera recorded her opening the routing system. Sofia activated the legitimate recall protocol, using her fingerprint and real voice to cancel the fraudulent command. She then transmitted an alternate instruction directing the convoy to a Moretti Maritime inspection yard, where independent corporate cameras would document their arrival. Before closing the session, she erased the live destination cache. It was a necessary protective measure. Anyone monitoring the system would see that the original route had been canceled, but would not learn where the soldiers were going. The 40 men never reached the inspection yard. At 8:17, someone used Sofia's copied biometrics to restore the deleted cache and replace her safe destination with an abandoned freight terminal in Red Hook. The false command appeared to originate from the session she had opened. Matteo entered the room 30 seconds later with 2 guards. He found Sofia alone beside a deleted record. Her limited voice profile authorized the order. Her fingerprint confirmed it. Her cadence cipher appeared inside it. Surveillance footage showed her opening the system and erasing the destination history. Every element of the accusation was genuine. Only the sequence had been changed. Sofia was taken to the underground council chamber before she could recover the accounting audit or contact Dante alone. Matteo presented the evidence while the missing soldiers' families demanded answers. One driver's body camera had survived long enough to record Sofia's voice ordering the convoy onward. She tried to warn Dante without exposing the hidden account to whoever controlled the room. "Not in front of everyone," she told him. He heard evasion. When he signed her death warrant, Sofia felt something inside her become still. Dante had not condemned her because he lacked intelligence. He had condemned her because he trusted his security system, his oldest friend, and the authority of his counsel more than the woman who had spent 7 years protecting him from words designed to deceive. Then Eleonora's childhood phrase appeared across the screens. Sofia seized the intercom and delivered her impossible message. The Allied delegations stopped in the corridors above. Matteo locked the chamber doors and aimed his weapon at her. Across every monitor, the response appeared. The boy finally listened. Dante rose slowly. "Lower the gun, Matteo. The building has been compromised." "Then why are you pointing it at my translator?" "Because she just activated the breach." Sofia looked beyond the weapon to the ventilation display. Airflow had stopped in the corridors but increased inside the chamber. A faint white vapor curled through the nearest ceiling grill. "Dante, hold your breath." She threw her broken heel into the fire suppression panel. The alarm screamed. Steel shutters dropped over the ventilation grills, and emergency sprinklers exploded above the council table. As the room plunged into red emergency light, Sofia drove her shoulder into the guard beside her, seized his access card, and ran toward the interpreter's booth. A shot tore across her upper arm. She stumbled but did not fall. The booth contained a floor hatch used for translation cables. Sofia had supervised its installation 2 years earlier. She opened it with the stolen card, lowered herself into the narrow service channel, and pulled the hatch closed as bullets struck the reinforced glass above her. She crawled through darkness while blood soaked the sleeve of her crimson dress. Behind her, Dante shouted her name. For one terrible second, she almost turned back. Then her phone vibrated inside her handbag. The hospital's night nurse was crying. 2 men with Moretti credentials had entered Gianna's room during the council meeting. The trusted guards had been reassigned by a valid order bearing Dante's signature. Gianna was gone. A photograph arrived from an unknown number. It showed Gianna unconscious beside 3 of the missing soldiers inside the Red Hook terminal. Beneath it was a final instruction. "Come alone with the pen, or your sister dies first." Sofia emerged from the service tunnel, 3 blocks from Moretti Tower. She bound her wounded arm with a strip torn from her dress, hid the gold encryption key beneath the insole of her remaining shoe, and placed the empty pen inside her handbag. Then she entered the black car waiting at the curb. By the time Dante forced open the chamber doors, Sofia Bellini had disappeared. Dante forced the chamber doors open 7 minutes after Sofia disappeared. The Allied delegations had retreated to separate floors, each surrounded by armed guards. The treaty was effectively dead. Without Sofia, 3 interpreters began offering conflicting translations of the emergency negotiations, and a sentence meant to promise temporary cooperation was rendered as a demand for unconditional control. Dante ended the meeting before another mistake started a war. Matteo found him in the communications room studying the final image of Sofia crawling into the service hatch. She planned that escape, Matteo said. She knew the building better than most of our guards. She helped design the room. Exactly. Dante paused the recording on the instant the bullet crossed Sofia's arm. Blood marked the booth's glass you fired. After I ordered you to lower your weapon. She had activated a chemical attack. Sofia saw the vapor before anyone else because she knew it was coming. The explanation was possible. That was what made it dangerous. Dante ordered every active system disconnected from the Alliance network. Within minutes, the consequences of Sofia's absence multiplied. No one could authenticate the Serbian amendments. The Arabic version of the port agreement contained 2 incompatible ownership clauses. A Russian delegate refused to continue because a substitute interpreter had confused custody with control. For 7 years, Sofia had prevented such failures before they reached Dante. He had called that efficiency. Now it looked like dependence. At 9:06 p.m., the hospital called his private line. The night nurse asked whether he had authorized Gianna Bellini's transfer. 2 men carrying Moretti credentials had removed her 23 minutes earlier. The electronic order bore Dante's signature. He had signed no such order. The nurse also described the safeguard Sofia had arranged that morning. A verbal password, a restricted visitor list, and 2 private guards. Those guards had been reassigned through the same continuity system used to move the missing convoy. That was the first contradiction. A woman preparing to betray Dante and escape would not spend the morning building protection around a sister she intended to abandon. Sofia had known someone might target Gianna. She had tried to contain the danger without using compromised Moretti channels. Dante said nothing to Matteo. Instead, he requested the raw recording from the surviving driver's body camera. The system copy identified Sofia's voice and placed the order at 8:17 p.m. Dante listened to it 6 times. Sofia had established a rule after a mistranslated address nearly killed one of his captains. Every operational coordinate had to be spoken twice, first in English and then in the driver's strongest language. The recording contained only English at the bottom of the body camera image. The vehicle's independent clock showed 8:16:43. The soldiers had heard Sofia's supposed order 19 seconds before the communications system claimed it was created. That was the second contradiction. Dante sent the file to Evelyn Shaw at Moretti Maritime, bypassing internal security. Evelyn confirmed that the body camera synchronized with a satellite clock every 60 seconds. Its margin of error was less than half a second. She also found a translation invoice trapped in the corporate quarantine server. Sofia had embedded a hardware certificate number inside its punctuation. The token belonged to Rinaldi Strategic Protection. Dante looked through the glass wall at Matteo directing the search teams. Suspicion was not proof. Matteo's company had issued hundreds of security devices before being absorbed into the Moretti organization. Someone else could have used one. Dante needed to know who was watching. He called Matteo into the council chamber. We recovered Sofia's gold encryption key inside the service tunnel, Dante said. I am moving it to the executive server room for analysis. Matteo's expression remained controlled. If she abandoned it, she may have expected us to find it. Or she no longer needs it. Double the guards. After Matteo left, Dante gave a different account to council attorney Samuel Voss. He told Voss that Sofia still possessed the key and had tried using it from outside the building. Then Dante waited. 11 minutes later, Eleonora Moretti's dead account issued an emergency command opening the executive server room. No command targeted Sofia's external signal. Someone had acted on the false information given only to Matteo. That was the third contradiction. Dante felt no relief. Each inconsistency removed a piece of the case against Sofia and replaced it with something worse. evidence that his own judgment had delivered her wounded into the hands of the person hunting her. He had signed the order. He had watched her ask for privacy and treated caution as guilt. "Where is Matteo?" Dante asked. A guard checked the internal tracker, security control. "Keep him there quietly." Dante accessed the hospital's original parking footage through the building owner rather than the Moretti network. The vehicle that removed Gianna carried temporary medical plates, but a reflection in the ambulance bay revealed the outline of an older number beneath them. Evelyn searched Moretti Maritime Estocamera archive. The vehicle belonged to Rinaldi Strategic Protection. It traveled from the hospital to the Red Hook terminal, remained there for 17 minutes, then continued north. A second Rinaldi vehicle left the terminal moments later, carrying enough weight to lower its rear suspension. The first van headed toward a closed ferry depot on the East River. The second approached Moretti Tower, a diversion and a delivery. Dante ordered a trusted captain to intercept the vehicle coming toward the tower, but told no one where he was going. He removed his tracking watch, took an unregistered car from the corporate garage, and drove toward the ferry depot alone. At 10:12 p.m., Evelyn called him with one final discovery. The hardware token attached to Eleonora's account had not merely been issued by Matteo's former company. Matteo himself had collected it from the manufacturer and signed the chain of custody record 6 months earlier. Dante reached the abandoned depot 11 minutes later. Through a broken window, he saw Gianna tied to a chair beside 4 missing soldiers. The other 36 men were nowhere in sight. Sofia stood several yards away, her wounded arm bound with blood-stained crimson silk. A guard held a weapon against her back while she placed the empty gold pen on a table. Matteo was not with them. A woman emerged from the shadows and picked up the pen. Even after 22 years, Dante recognized his mother's face. Dante remained outside the broken window and forced himself not to move. Every instinct demanded that he enter, put himself between Sofia and the armed guards, and take control. That instinct had already cost her blood. Inside the depot, Eleonora Moretti turned the empty gold pen between her fingers. "Where is the key?" she asked. Sofia stood barefoot on the stained concrete, her face pale from blood loss but her voice steady. "Somewhere Matteo will never find it." At the sound of Matteo's name, Eleonora's expression sharpened. "He warned me you were stubborn. He underestimated me. Apparently that runs in the family." One guard struck Sofia behind the knees. She fell but caught herself with her uninjured arm. Gianna cried out from across the room. Dante's hand tightened around his weapon still. He waited 2 of Eleonora. Guards spoke Albanian to each other. Sofia had noticed it too. Her gaze moved between them, the 4 captive soldiers, and the van parked beside the depot's loading doors. Eleonora issued an order in Italian. "Take the sister to the boat. Leave the soldiers. Kill the translator before you burn the building." The Albanian guards looked at Sofia for the translation. She lifted her chin and spoke fluently in their language. The older woman says to release the prisoners and load everyone into the van. The translator must remain alive until the key is recovered. One guard began cutting Gianna's restraints. The other moved toward the soldiers. Eleonora saw Dante's shadow reflected in the depot window. "You lying little," Sofia hurled the empty pen at the overhead light. Dante fired at the same instant. Glass exploded, darkness swallowed the depot, and one of the captive soldiers drove his shoulder into a guard. Sofia crossed the space toward Gianna from memory. She pulled her sister from the chair and lowered her behind a steel support column as bullets struck the concrete around them. Dante entered through the side window. He did not call Sofia's name. He trusted her to know where safety was and concentrated on the guards advancing toward her position. One fell back. Another abandoned his weapon and ran toward the river exit. Eleonora escaped through that same door. Dante saw his mother disappear onto the dock, where a motorboat waited in the darkness. 22 years of questions moved away from him across the black water. Behind him, Gianna screamed a guard had seized Sofia's wounded arm and dragged her from behind the column. She twisted with the motion instead of resisting it, drove her elbow into his throat, and stamped down on his knee. When his grip loosened, she took his weapon and pushed Gianna behind her. Dante could pursue Eleonora or help secure the depot. He turned away from the river. By the time emergency lights flickered on, the remaining guards had surrendered or fled. The 4 missing soldiers were alive but drugged and badly dehydrated. Gianna was conscious, though the sedative in her system made it difficult for her to stand. Sofia kept the recovered weapon aimed at Dante. He stopped 6 feet away. "I came for you," he said. "You came because the evidence changed." Yes, the answer surprised her. Dante lowered his weapon and placed it on the floor. "I signed your death order, I remember. I was wrong. And if the driver's clock had matched the system, he had no answer that would not insult them both." Sofia's hand trembled around the weapon, but her aim remained fixed. "Would you still believe I deserved to die?" Dante looked at the blood spreading through the makeshift bandage around her arm. "I believed a system because admitting my inner circle was compromised, threatened everything I controlled. That is an explanation. It is not an apology." "No," he said, "it is tea." A vehicle approached outside. Sofia immediately moved Gianna behind the van. Dante did not order her to stop. He checked the window and recognized 3 men from the corporate security team he had contacted through Evelyn Shaw. Only then did Sofia lower the weapon. They relocated to a refrigerated records facility owned by Moretti Maritime. It had no connection to the criminal security network and used independent cameras maintained by the company's insurance carrier. Evelyn brought a physician who treated Gianna and cleaned the furrow across Sofia's upper arm. The bullet had removed skin and muscle but missed the bone. Sofia would retain movement, though lifting or gripping with that arm would be painful for several weeks. Dante waited until the physician finished. 36 soldiers are still missing, he said. Sofia sat beside Gianna, wearing an oversized company coat over her torn crimson dress. They were moved onto a cargo vessel before I arrived. I heard the guards mention Pier 41. Why didn't you call me after you escaped? My sister had been taken with credentials bearing your signature. Your phones were mirrored. Your guards answered to Matteo, and you had just ordered my execution. Which part of that suggested a safe conversation? Dante accepted the answer without defending himself. He showed her the hardware certificate, the body camera timestamp, and the command triggered by the false information he had given Matteo. Sofia examined each item. You proved Matteo is connected to the dead account, she said. You haven't proved. He created the convoy order. My mother did. Your mother needed Matteo's access, but she called him by his last name. When she spoke to the guards, they are partners, not master and servant. Dante studied her. What does she want? The alliance to collapse publicly. Once the 3 families withdraw, the Moretti Council invokes emergency succession rules. Operational control passes to the security chief until stability is restored. Matteo and your mother gains control of Moretti Maritime through the original family trust. I translated part of that trust 5 years ago. If you are declared incapable of protecting the organization, your authority reverts to the last surviving member of your father's generation. My mother is legally dead. Then someone intends to make her legally alive at exactly the right moment. It was only the first layer. They still lacked the original trust amendment, proof that Eleonora controlled the legacy account, and evidence connecting either conspirator to the abducted soldiers. Dante looked at Sofia's handbag, the encryption key. She reached down and retrieved the single shoe she had carried out of the service tunnel. Using her good hand, she peeled back the inner sole and removed a thin gold strip. Dante almost smiled. They searched you. They searched my handbag. Men like Matteo rarely examine a woman's shoe unless they think it contains a weapon. She placed the key on the table but kept 2 fingers over it. "You don't get this because you found me," she said. "And you do not get my trust because you admitted one mistake. What do you want? Control of the investigation. Full access to the corporate audit servers. No orders issued in my name. No action against Matteo until I decide we have enough evidence." Dante had never surrendered operational authority to anyone. Sofia watched him without pleading. "You may refuse," she said. "Gianna and I will leave before dawn." Dante removed his signet ring, the symbol that authenticated his direct commands, and set it beside the encryption key. "You lead," he said. "I follow the evidence." An alert appeared on Evelyn's independent monitor. The 3 allied families had scheduled an emergency succession ceremony for the following night. Matteo would be appointed temporary ruler unless Dante appeared and restored the treaty. Sofia studied the notice. "If we stop that ceremony, Eleonora disappears and takes the soldiers with her. Then we let it continue?" "No." Sofia closed her hand around the gold key. "We make them believe you still want me dead. Then we give Matteo the one thing he cannot resist, a false route to the evidence that could destroy him." For the first time, Dante did not tell her what to do next. He waited for her plan. Sofia built the counter-trap from a refrigerated records room, while a physician warned her not to lift her injured arm. She ignored the pain but not the limitation. Evelyn moved the archive boxes. Dante followed Sofia's instructions without modifying them, even when she required him to surrender every personal communication device and write sensitive orders by hand at dawn. They placed the evidence across a steel table. The first level proved that the official accusation was false. The convoy recording predated Sofia's command. Her mandatory bilingual confirmation was missing, and the ventilation override began before she struck the fire panel. Those contradictions cleared her logically, but they identified no single culprit. The second level established access. Matteo had collected the hardware token linked to Eleonora's account. His security company supplied the vehicle used to abduct Gianna. The dead account reacted to information given only to him. Evelyn added a certified copy of the original family trust. If Dante lost operational control during a failed alliance, authority would pass temporarily to the security chief. If Eleonora was subsequently declared alive, ownership of Moretti Maritime would return to her branch of the family. Matteo gained the Empire's weapons. Eleonora gained its lawful assets. None of it proved they had knowingly created the false orders, abducted the soldiers, or coordinated the succession. "We have motive and access," Dante said, "not the decisive act." "That is why the ceremony continues," Sofia replied. Dante looked toward Gianna, who was sleeping behind a glass partition. "My mother still has 36 men. If we cancel, she kills them, destroys the legacy account, and disappears. Matteo claims you invented her to avoid removal, and if we attend, they must activate the trust in front of all 3 allied families. Eleonora cannot inherit while legally dead. She has to appear, submit an identity claim, or send an authenticated declaration." Dante understood. For the first time, she has to connect herself to the system. Sofia inserted the thin gold encryption key into an offline terminal. The device opened her private audit vault, preserving every original command she had reviewed before Matteo erased the live records. Among them was the restricted voice profile request bearing Matteo's expanded access parameters. Still, the vault did not contain the order that redirected the convoy. That command had been created after Sofia's final backup. The decisive evidence had to come from the conspirators themselves. Sofia constructed a false document in 3 languages. It appeared to be a deposition recorded by Dante's father shortly before his death, declaring that Eleonora had used a false identity to seize Moretti assets. If authentic, it would invalidate her claim and expose anyone assisting her. The document contained no genuine accusation. Its purpose was to create a unique piece of controlled information. Sofia placed 3 different locations inside 3 translations. The Italian version claimed the original deposition was hidden beneath the succession chamber. The Russian version placed it in Moretti Tower. The Arabic version placed it aboard a corporate records vessel. Only the Italian copy entered Matteo's private briefing packet. If he acts on the chamber location, we establish that he received the document, Dante said. Not enough. He can claim he was protecting the ceremony, so we make the alleged evidence inaccessible to ordinary security. They created a false vault beneath the Interpreter-S platform and sealed it with Sosis gold key. Inside, they placed a paper bearing a second controlled message. The real evidence had already been transferred to Pier 41. The message was another lie. If Matteo communicated that location to Eleonora, Evelyn's independent port cameras would record whatever moved in response. More importantly, the 3 allied families would witness Matteo opening a vault he had no legitimate reason to know existed. Technology alone could not be trusted. Sofia therefore prepared a physical fallback. Each allied boss would receive a sealed paper copy of the false deposition S Italian version immediately before the ceremony. Their attorneys would record the time and intact seal by hand. If the cameras failed or the network was erased, 3 hostile families would still possess matching proof of what Matteo had known and when he acted. Dante watched her arrange the envelopes. You planned for every system to fail. I planned for the people controlling them to lie. He accepted the rebuke. At noon, Evelyn found a customs discrepancy involving the cargo vessel at Pier 41. Its registered weight exceeded its declared freight by approximately 36 adult passengers. Sofia organized the recovery without using Moretti security. Moretti Maritime dispatched a legitimate inspection tug on the pretext of a hazardous fuel violation. 6 loyal corporate officers boarded the vessel under insurance authority and found the missing soldiers locked inside 2 refrigerated containers with disabled cooling systems. All 36 were alive. The rescue was kept secret. Publicly, the men remained missing, preserving Matteo's belief that his leverage still existed. One recovered soldier remembered hearing Eleonora discussing a second convoy scheduled to arrive during the succession ceremony. He had no recording and could not identify its purpose, but his testimony established a new danger. Sofia adjusted the plan. They installed no armed team beneath the stage. Anyone searching for obvious security would find nothing instead. The 4 soldiers rescued at the ferry depot took positions among the building's fire inspectors, while independent corporate guards controlled the loading exits. The Alliance families would provide their own protection inside the chamber, preventing Matteo from commanding every weapon in the room. At sunset, Sofia changed into a fitted black dress that accommodated the bandage on her upper arm. The fabric embraced her soft, full figure with the same confidence she had carried into every negotiation. She refused the loose coat Dante offered her. I will not enter that room looking ashamed. You should not enter at all. It is my trap, and if Matteo recognizes it, then follow my instructions instead of your fear. Dante held her gaze. What are your instructions? You will denounce me publicly. You will say I manipulated you at the ferry depot and that my execution will proceed after the succession vote. His expression hardened. No, if they believe you trust me, Matteo never opens the vault. I already destroyed your reputation once. Then this time I decide how it is used. The distinction silenced him. Sofia handed him the empty death warrant he had signed. When the moment comes, place this on the Interpreter-S table and the signal? I will mistranslate one sentence. Dante's voice lowered. Which one? You will know an hour before the ceremony. Dante appeared on every secure Alliance channel. Sofia Bellini has been recaptured, he announced. Her attempt to compromise the Moretti succession has failed. She will be brought before the council to hear the final judgment. The message reached Matteo inside Moretti Tower. 11 minutes later, the dead account belonging to Eleonora Moretti opened the architectural plans beneath the succession chamber. The trap had been accepted, but as Sofia and Dante entered separate vehicles, Evelyn received an unexpected port alert. The second convoy described by the rescued soldier was already moving 3 armored trucks carrying Matteo's men and enough explosives to collapse every exit beneath the ceremony hall. Eleonora had taken the bait. She had also prepared to bury everyone who witnessed it. The succession ceremony began while Matteo's third armored truck descended beneath Moretti Tower. 2 trucks had been intercepted by the corporate inspection teams before reaching Manhattan. The third carried valid city utility permits and entered through a maintenance checkpoint controlled by Matteo's security officers. By the time Evelyn identified it, the vehicle was parked across the underground access tunnel. 8 armed men emerged. They placed explosive charges against the emergency doors and disabled the building's mechanical release system. The exits were not yet destroyed, but Matteo could collapse them with a single transmitted signal. Canceling the ceremony would trigger that signal and trap more than 200 people beneath the tower. Sofia entered the succession chamber with her wrists restrained in front of her. The bindings were real. Matteo would have inspected anything less. Her fitted black dress moved gracefully over her full curves, and the white bandage beneath one sleeve remained visible. The room watched her with the cold fascination reserved for a disgraced woman being brought before the men she had supposedly betrayed. Dante stood on the raised council platform. He gave her no sign of recognition. Matteo approached and examined the restraints himself. "You should have left the country. You should have chosen a system. I didn't a design." His smile carried no warmth. "Your system brought you back in chains." Guards placed Sofia inside the interpreter's enclosure, at the center of the chamber. Its walls were transparent, allowing every delegation to see her, but the reinforced glass separated her from Dante and the Allied leaders. Matteo had altered the room. The floor hatch beneath the interpreter's platform was sealed from outside. The emergency intercom had been disconnected. Sofia's only working equipment was a microphone routed through Matteo's control board. He had isolated her voice and made himself its gatekeeper. The 3 Allied bosses took their seats with attorneys and personal guards behind them. Each attorney received the sealed Italian deposition exactly as planned. Their handwritten records established the delivery time. Dante opened the ceremony. "Yesterday, Sofia Bellini used her access to redirect my soldiers and fracture this alliance. She then escaped lawful judgment and conspired with an enemy claiming to be Eleonora Moretti." The words struck harder because Sofia had written them for him. Dante placed her signed death warrant on the interpreter's table. The order stands. A murmur of approval passed through the council. Sofia translated his statement into Russian, Arabic, and Italian without changing a syllable. Her face revealed nothing, but Dante saw her injured hand tighten once beneath the table. Matteo presented the emergency succession petition. It declared Dante incapable of maintaining security, demanded the temporary transfer of operational control, and authorized Matteo to command all Moretti personnel until the alliance was restored. The vote required 3 Allied witnesses. Before the ballots were distributed, every screen in the chamber turned blue. Eleonora Moretti appeared live from an undisclosed location. She wore black, as if attending the funeral of the son she intended to replace. A New York probate attorney stood beside her with identity records, medical comparisons, and a sworn declaration explaining that Dante's father had imprisoned her under a false name after she discovered his financial crimes. Much of the evidence was genuine. Dante recognized private details no imposter could have known. Eleonora did not deny being alive. She transformed her disappearance into proof that she had been a victim. "I returned," she said, because my son's translator uncovered what his own pride refused to see. Sofia Bellini contacted me 6 months ago and offered access to the Moretti systems in exchange for protection. Matteo displayed images of Sofia at the ferry depot, handing Eleonora the gold pen. The photographs omitted Gianna, the captive soldiers, and the weapon aimed at Sofia's back. A recorded call followed. Sofia's cloned voice promised to deliver Dante's empire before the succession vote. The room turned toward her. The false evidence was stronger than before, because it contained a true meeting everyone knew had occurred. Sofia reached for her microphone. Matteo muted it. Dante's expression remained merciless. Let her speak. She has manipulated enough translations. Then I will decide whether she lies. Matteo restored the channel. Sofia addressed Eleonora in Italian. If I was your partner, tell the council what you promised me. Eleonora had prepared an answer. Ownership of the communications division and freedom for your sister. Gianna's abduction was recast as a negotiated extraction. Sofia looked toward Dante. Their original plan required him to appear convinced. He stepped away from her enclosure. You told me your sister had been taken, he said. She was. Yet you entered Eleonora's vehicle willingly, to keep Gianna alive. Another explanation without proof. The sentence mirrored Sofia's words at the ferry depot. Only she understood the signal beneath the cruelty. Dante was still following her lead. Matteo called for the succession vote. Before the first ballot could be signed, one of his guards whispered into his ear. The controlled Italian deposition had been opened. The document claimed that evidence invalidating Eleonora's inheritance lay beneath the chamber. Matteo ordered an immediate security inspection in front of the 3 allied families. He crossed to Sofia's platform and removed the concealed floor panel. He entered a code no ordinary security chief should have possessed and opened the false vault. Inside waited the message directing him to Pier 41. The witnesses saw him read it. For 1 second, the trap worked perfectly. Then Matteo looked directly at Sofia and smiled. You expected me to send someone to the pier. He tore the message in half. At that moment, Evelyn's independent cameras went dark. The maritime audit server disconnected, and the corporate guards stationed at the loading exits stopped responding. Matteo had identified their fallback network. A second screen activated. Evelyn appeared tied to a chair inside the accounting archive. Behind her, a masked man held Sofia's gold encryption key, the real one. Sofia instinctively looked down. The strip beneath her shoe was gone. Matteo had replaced it during his inspection of her restraints, with Sofia's key and Dante's executive signature copied from the death warrant. Eleonora opened the family trust as final authentication channel. The succession ballots illuminated. 2 allied bosses voted to remove Dante. The third raised his hand over the final authorization. This vote completes, Matteo announced. Every Morty guard in this building answers to me. Dante's men shifted uncertainly. The legal command had not yet transferred, but their loyalty was already dividing. Sofia studied the interpreter's control panel. Matteo had disabled the intercom, yet the old analog translation line remained connected to every delegate's earpiece. He had overlooked it because it could carry audio but no digital command. She switched the channel from Italian to Albanian. Then she deliberately mistranslated Eleonora's final instruction. Eleonora said, "Authorize the transfer." Sofia told Matteo's men beneath the tower, "The prisoners have escaped. Detonate the eastern doors and move to the river." The armed team obeyed. An explosion shook the chamber. Smoke rolled through the eastern corridor, but the western emergency doors remained intact. Matteo's men had revealed their location and abandoned the detonator guarding the only usable exit. Across the room, the third allied boss froze with his hand above the final ballot. Sofia turned to Dante through the reinforced glass and spoke the sentence they had chosen as their signal. "The blue room has 2 doors." Dante picked up the death warrant, tore it in half. and reached beneath the council table for the evidence Matteo believed had already been destroyed. Dante pulled 3 sealed envelopes from beneath the council table. Matteo stared at them. "Those are copies of a fabricated deposition." "Yes," Sofia said through the analog translation line, "and only your Italian copy named the vault beneath this chamber. You placed suspicious material under the floor. As security chief, I had every right to inspect it. That explains opening the vault. It does not explain the men waiting at Pier 41. Matteo's expression did not change. Eleonora answered from the screen. "There are no men at the pier. Your cameras are dead. The digital cameras are." Sofia turned toward the 3 allied bosses. Before the ceremony, she had placed independent witnesses aboard an insurance inspection tug near Pier 41. They carried mechanical cameras, handwritten manifests, and sealed copies of the false message inside Matteo's vault. They did not rely on the Moretti network. Minutes after Matteo read that message, a launch registered to Rinaldi Strategic Protection approached the pier. 4 men boarded a Moretti maritime records vessel and attempted to remove a specific steel archive box that did not exist anywhere except the false document. The witnesses had detained 2 of them. The others escaped. One captured man possessed a paper order carrying Eleonora's restored legal signature. It directed him to recover the Bellini deposition before the succession vote ended. The document was brought into the chamber by the western corridor. Matteo examined the signature. Sofia created the false deposition. She could have created this. That was what I expected you to say. Sofia placed her bound hands against the interpreter's console. The location was false, but the archive box number was real. It belonged to a customs case closed 9 years ago. I selected it because its original record is maintained by a federal insurance auditor outside every Moretti system. The number had never appeared in Italian. She looked toward Eleonora. "Until you used it in an order signed less than 6 minutes after Matteo opened my vault." For the first time, uncertainty entered Eleonora's face. The controlled information trap connected Matteo's access to Eleonora's action. Still, she recovered quickly. "A signed instruction proves that I wanted a document," Eleonora said. "It does not prove I abducted anyone or forged Sofia's command." "No," Sofia agreed. "The key proves that." The gold strip Eleonora had used was not merely an encryption device. Before the ceremony, Sofia had placed it in forensic audit mode. In that mode, it granted access once, then locked the authorization sequence inside Raidan's memory. The memory did not transmit through any network. It remained physically inside the strip. Eleonora had unknowingly carried the record of her own transaction. Dante produced a small reader from beneath the council table and connected it to an isolated display. The sequence appeared for every witness to see. Sofia's stolen key had not activated the trust alone. It had been paired with the same Rinaldi hardware token used to control Eleonora's dead account and forge the convoy order. The transaction included Matteo's live fingerprint. Matteo stepped away from the council platform. Fabricated. The western doors opened behind him. The 36 recovered soldiers entered the chamber. They were pale and unsteady after their captivity, but they walked under their own power. 3 carried the restraints cut from the cargo containers. Another carried the vessel's original paper manifest, listing the containers as security equipment under Matteo's authorization. The convoy commander faced the council. Matteo's voice ordered us to ignore Sofia's recall command. When our drivers objected, Rinaldi officers took control of the vehicles. Eleonora Moretti visited the vessel before we were moved. We heard them discussing the succession transfer. Matteo reached beneath his jacket. Sofia saw the movement before Dante did. "Down!" Matteo fired at the interpreter's enclosure. Reinforced glass fractured but held. Allied guards drew their weapons, yet several Moretti officers hesitated, uncertain whether the succession authority had transferred. Matteo struck the control attached to his wrist. The remaining charges beneath the tower activated. Nothing happened. When Sofia mistranslated Eleonora's instruction, the underground team had detonated the eastern charges prematurely and abandoned the western detonator. The disguised fire inspectors then entered through the surviving doors and physically disconnected the remaining blasting circuits. The defense had not depended on a wireless signal that Matteo could block. Matteo fired again and moved toward the final succession ballot. Sofia drove her shoulder against the side of the interpreter's console. The impact sent pain through her injured arm, but the analog panel shifted. Behind it was a mechanical release required by city fire regulations. Matteo had disabled the electronic locks and overlooked the manual cable. Sofia pulled it. The enclosure opened. She stepped into the chamber, seized the unsigned ballot, and tore it across the authorization strip before Matteo could reach her. Without the original paper, the final vote could not be legally registered. Matteo turned his weapon toward her. Dante moved between them. Before Matteo could fire, the 4 soldiers rescued from the ferry depot entered from the loading corridor and forced him to the floor. One secured his wrist while another removed the detonator. On the screens, Eleonora's video feed began to move. She was escaping. Sofia recognized the low vibration beneath her microphone and the pattern of reflected lights passing across the window behind Eleonora. The transmission was coming from a vehicle traveling south along the river. "The blue light repeats every 12 seconds, Sofia said. "She inside the Battery Park tunnel." Dante reached for his phone. "No," Sofia warned. "She controls your network." She switched to the independent maritime radio and spoke in Albanian, the language Eleonora's remaining drivers believed was still secure. Sofia transmitted a false instruction, ordering the vehicle toward Pier 41, where the captured courier supposedly waited with the deposition. Eleonora's driver obeyed. The vehicle emerged at the river checkpoint and found the rescued convoy soldiers blocking the road with the inspection tug's transport truck. Corporate guards controlled the only turn behind it. Eleonora attempted to reverse, but the fire inspection vehicle Sofia had positioned as a physical fallback closed the lane. Her escape ended without a shot. Back inside the chamber, Sofia stood before the 3 allied families. Blood had begun seeping through the bandage beneath her black sleeve, but her voice remained clear. She translated the convoy commander's testimony, the paper order, and the encryption record into every language represented in the room. No substitute interpreter touched her words. No man spoke over her. When she finished, the 3rd Allied boss withdrew his ballot. The other 2 followed. Dante placed the torn death warrant beside Matteo's confiscated weapon. "Sofia Bellini did not betray this alliance," he said. "I did when I condemned its most loyal defender without hearing her evidence." Sofia looked across the chamber where he had once destroyed her name. This time, he restored it before the same witnesses. Then the allied families turned toward Matteo, and the empire he had nearly stolen withdrew its protection from him. Matteo Rinaldi lost his empire before sunrise. The 3 allied families withdrew their support and recognized the evidence gathered during the succession ceremony. Without their protection, Matteo's remaining guards surrendered control of Moretti Tower. The kidnapping vehicles, explosive permits, cargo manifests, and right-on-sea authentication record were transferred through Moretti Maritime's attorneys to federal investigators. Matteo faced charges involving abduction, unlawful detention, explosives, corporate fraud, and conspiracy. Eleonora Moretti was taken into custody at Pier 41. Her survival claim proved genuine, but her right to the family trust was suspended after investigators connected her restored identity to the forged convoy order and Gianna's kidnapping. The courts froze the disputed assets. Moretti Maritime continued operating under an independent board rather than returning automatically to Dante. He accepted the loss of control. The 36 soldiers received medical care and full compensation. Gianna recovered under protected hospital supervision. Evelyn survived her captivity with a fractured wrist and immediately demanded a larger legal department. Sofia required surgery to repair the damage in her upper arm. The physician expected her to regain most of her strength, but recovery would take months. 3 days later, she returned to the succession chamber. The shattered interpreter S enclosure had been removed. A long table now occupied its place, and every captain, allied representative, attorney, and employee who had witnessed her condemnation had been summoned again. Dante stood before them without his signet ring. Sofia Bellini protected this organization when I failed to protect her, he said. She warned me that our systems were compromised. I refused to hear her because I trusted authority more than evidence. He did not mention the pressure of the alliance, Matteo's deception, or the apparent strength of the accusation. I signed an order that placed her life in danger. I destroyed her name publicly. There is no excuse for what I did. Dante placed the original council record on the table. Her conviction is void. Every accusation against her will be withdrawn from our archives and corrected before every family that received it. The council authority that permitted an execution without an independent evidentiary hearing ends today. He signed the reform in front of the same people who had watched him sign Sofia's death warrant. Then he turned toward her. I am sorry, Sofia. She held his gaze. I believe you understand what you did. It was not forgiveness. Dante accepted that. He offered her ownership of the Moretti Communications Division. Sofia refused. I will not inherit another position that exists only because you need me. What would you accept? My own multilingual intelligence firm, independent ownership, independent clients, and a contract with Moretti Maritime that either party can end. Done. I wasn't asking permission. A quiet smile touched Dante's mouth. Then send the board your terms. Sofia spent the next 4 months away from Moretti Tower. She recovered beside Gianna, established Bellini Global Intelligence, and hired translators who had previously been treated as invisible support staff. Evelyn became the firm's outside counsel. Dante did not appear at Sofia's home uninvited. He did not send guards to follow her or gifts designed to purchase forgiveness. Every Friday, he sent one handwritten letter. Some contained apologies. Others described reforms he had implemented. Independent authentication, civilian oversight of corporate security, medical support for the rescued soldiers' families. He never asked Sofia to return. She answered only twice. 6 months after the succession ceremony, Sofia entered the Moretti Maritime boardroom, wearing a deep blue dress and carrying a new gold fountain pen. Dante stood automatically when she entered. This time, no place waited behind his shoulder. Her name appeared on a brass plate at the opposite side of the table. Sofia Bellini, founder. Bellini Global Intelligence. The Petrov representative presented a revised port agreement. Dante read the English version, then looked across the table. Miss Bellini, what did he actually offer? Sofia studied the Russian text. For 7 years, Dante had expected her to whisper the truth into his ear while he received the credit. Now he waited in front of the entire board for her independent judgment. He offered a fair partnership, she said, but the liability clause still favors him. Dante closed the contract. Then we renegotiate. After the meeting, he found Sofia beside the windows overlooking Manhattan. I owe you dinner, he said. You owe me considerably more than dinner. I know. She watched him for a moment. The man before her still possessed power, but he no longer mistook power for the right to decide for her. One dinner, Sofia said. No guards, no negotiations, and it is not forgiveness. Dante offered his hand without reaching for hers. Your terms. Sofia chose to take it behind them. The board waited for both partners to return, not a mafia king and the invisible woman standing in his shadow, but 2 people entering the room side by side.